Thanks so much for coming. It's really great to see all my good friends, so appreciate having you all here. So today's event is sponsored by our Loss of a Loved One group, and this was such a broad topic that I invited everybody to come and participate, and no matter their reasons for being here, and we're going to ask you that later. But as you may know, Americans move very, very often. Some studies say every 5 or 6 years. Have you heard that? That Americans like to move. Sometimes they go across the street, sometimes they go in their own building and to a different apartment. Sometimes they move across the country, and once in a while even out of the country, very far away. So let me tell you about a woman I know in her 80s. This woman, Lily, lives in my neighborhood, and she was recently widowed, and I knew her and her husband for quite a while before she was widowed. Her husband, to whom she had been married for about 25 years, had had a previous marriage before he met her. And when he died, the apartment was in his name, and he left her half the apartment, and he left the other half of this co-op to his son from his first marriage. And although Lily was able to stay in the apartment as long as she wanted by terms of his will, she felt that the son was always staring at her and wishing she would go, and being very concerned about being uncomfortable, she decided that she would go. So Lily moved to another state where she had never been, and she knew no one, and she had no friends, and she had no relatives. When I asked her why she was moving there, permanently moving, she said, "I saw pictures and it looked very nice." I think Lily pictured herself in one of those sweet Victorian designed homes with one of those wraparound porches that I've seen in that town. I have been in that sweet town, and I'm sure the pictures were taken in spring or summer, because I've been to this beautiful little town in the winter, and it could be very, very harsh. There's no access to the roads. You can't get around. Driving is a real hazard. It's cold, it's snowy, it's wet, it's just a very hard place to live, and she hasn't gone through one of those yet. So my story doesn't have an ending yet. Lily's about to start her first winter this year in the new house, and I truly wish it works out well for her. I hope she gets what she wants out of it, and this is the town that she visualized. But I will tell you about Lily. She's a very, very warm, friendly, outgoing person. So I hope she has a lot of friendly new neighbors, because she likes to be out a lot, do a lot of things, and chat a lot, and entertain a lot. And I expect to hear back from Lily soon on one of her visits to New York. But right now, I think she and the house, the Victorian house, and the cute town are sort of on a honeymoon period. So it's too soon to tell how it will all turn out. Well, what do you think Lily could have done instead? I think she could have visited the town first. She could have vacationed there. She could have rented a home for the first year. That might have been an idea. She could have checked the community to make sure it had the activities she likes. She has dogs, so she would want a dog-friendly place. She's a gardener. She has a real passion for it. She'd want a place with a lot of gardens that she could participate in. She would want to check the distance from her family and any friends she has. Or when she went to look at the house or look at the town, she could have brought a friend with her for a second set of eyes and ears. That could have been an idea. In other words, she could have tried it out. I don't know, do you have any ideas on what will? She does drive, and it's quite a distance from here.
She could have read on the internet.
That's, done a little more research instead of just photos. Good point.
How old is Lily?
Lily's probably late 70s.
Wow.
Very active, very energetic. Those things sometimes change. I went to a church for a memorial for her husband, and she seemed to know people there, and they knew her, but I don't know how involved she is.
She wanted an adventure.
Good for Lily. Adventures are good sometimes, yes. So I've known people who moved back to New York when things didn't work out the way they wanted to. Of course, they didn't have the apartment anymore, and they had sort of gone through all their ties, so that makes it hard. But I'd like to introduce our speaker, Sharon Bregman. I met Sharon when we were introduced by my colleague, Ekta Patel. Where are you, Ekta? Oh, Ekta's there. And we both went to McGill University. We both grew up in Montreal. I'd love to tell you we met there, but we didn't. But we would have met if we had known.
Right.
So we actually met in our offices about a year ago. But since knowing Sharon, I've been very, very interested in her topic and her articles, her blogs, and about helping people make good decisions about moving, what to take with you when you go, how to move in the most efficient way, the true value of a lot of the things you have in your home, which may be a surprise for you. Please welcome Sharon Bregman.
Thank you. Pleasure. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to talk to you about moving and downsizing. I will be covering many facets. While I'm talking, if there is something that you would like to interject or a question that you would like to ask, please do not hesitate to raise your hand and interrupt me. You talk about people moving every 6 or 7 years. I only had one client who did that. Every time they needed to paint a home, they moved. It was just easier. If you're going to pack it up to paint it, you may as well just move on. Most of my clients seem to be in their homes for 20 plus years, some for 40 plus years, and I meet them when they have decided to move for a variety of reasons. It could be because they've lost a spouse. It could be because they can no longer navigate the stairs. It could be because their adult children have hounded them to the point where they have to give up this big home. And moving is a self-inflicted trauma. There's nothing easy about it. The amount of time since your last move to the time that you will be moving further compounds your shock, for lack of a better word. Moving is expensive. It involves the ability to let go of things, the desire and the fortitude to move on. And sometimes you need some help because it is overwhelming. My clients tend to range from people that have never made a decision in their lives to people who are highly competent, very organized, have built and run businesses. They're men and they're women. But when it comes to moving, they seem to hit a roadblock. And I can tell you about some of the psychological reasons that some of my clients have hit roadblocks. And I can give you little examples of widows, widowers, busy people. But before I do that, I would really like to understand who is here today by a show of hands because they're contemplating a move. Who is here because they feel that they're living with a bunch of clutter that they would like to get rid of? Okay. Is anybody here that is thinking about moving because they're living in space that is too big or too small? Okay. Let's talk about some of the roadblocks of decluttering, because that is the first step to a move. Once you have decided that you're going to move, or if you're on the fence about moving, you need to understand what it is time to shed. And it could be because you haven't used it in a bunch of years. It could be because you have already earmarked the place that you're moving to and you just don't have enough square footage, linear hanging space, shelf space. You cannot get 2,200 square feet into 1,700 square feet. That's all there is to it. Or, as one of my clients who moved from 16,000 square feet to 8,000 square feet, she had to eliminate half a household. This was a young woman in her 50s. with one young child at home, an adult daughter who had graduated college, and she was in this magnificent 16,000 square foot home. At one time, her late husband lived there. Her mother, who was now in a facility, used to live there, and there were 3 dogs and lots of help and lots of entertaining. Now she was just rattling around in a big house with a 9-year-old child. And she couldn't let go of this home because this home was her husband's fantasy come true. He had worked his whole life, and this was what he wanted. When I met her, and she was referred to me by her financial advisor, she was moving out of this home because there was no reason to carry this huge expense. And the house had been staged for sale. It was under contract. It was going to close in 4 months. She had 4 months in which to prepare herself to leave this home. And she was going to, there was a storage room twice the size of this room with shelves, with big plastic bins. This is how organized she was. Every bin was labeled for a specific child at a specific year of the life. And there were boxes and boxes of beautiful things. Everything was categorized, indexed. She ran a charity. She couldn't manage to get herself organized to move. Her husband's closet, which was a big walk-in dressing room, still had all of his clothing 2 years later. And she promised me that she would deal with this. She didn't want any help in decluttering. She was going to do it herself. And so I let her at it, and 6 weeks prior to the move, I went in to photograph, because I do a photographic inventory of everything you're taking, and she had done nothing. She couldn't. She was just absolutely frozen. And I was going out of town for 4.5 weeks. So I said, here's a whole bunch of people, my assistant, this antique dealer. I gave her all of my resources, and she said she would deal with it. And she did not. She couldn't. She just couldn't. What actually got her to do it was the day that we showed up with 8 moving guys, myself and my assistant, my 3 giant photo albums, and I said, we're here to pack. And she was running a room ahead of us, decluttering. And that's what it took. Sometimes it takes an extreme event for you to get moving. Has anybody faced this issue? Okay. I had another client, a wonderful gentleman. He did everything when his wife passed away. He sorted out her things, he donated to charity. It was time for him to move out of a very big home. And he knew where he was going. He knew exactly what he wanted to take. He needed some help with moving, but his biggest stumbling block was the dining room. He had a passionate marriage, they had a lovely, lavish lifestyle, and they entertained frequently and lavishly. And the dining room was filled with Spode china, sterling silver, crystal, you name it, they had it, and they could seat 50 people. That's how much stuff they had. And he couldn't set foot in the dining room, and he didn't know what to do with this stuff. And finally, one of his married children who lived in LA said, I'll take all the china, silver, and crystal. So the first thing we did, the movers and my staff, is the dining room was packed up. Harvey left the house that day, and when he came back at 4:30, there were all these china boxes packed up, and he walked over to them, and he caressed one of the boxes. I'm going to cry, forgive me. And he said goodbye to his wife. And so for Harvey, that was closure. So we all have our little ticks, if you would. So moving is a physical and a psychological hurdle. And when you think that you're ready to move, there is a whole series of things that you really need to address so that your move happens smoothly and efficiently. We all know that we need a moving company. You need to book that moving company well in advance of your move. If you are moving anywhere between the end of April and the middle of September, you had best book the moving company at least 3 to 4 months in advance. That is the busiest time of year to move. Also, try to move in the middle of the month, because the beginning and the end of the month is when everybody else in the world is trying to move. Moving should not be based on price alone. You don't want the most expensive mover. You don't want the least expensive mover. You want a mover that you know somebody has used. And I personally prefer boutique moving companies that are family-owned, second, third generation. You know that there's consistency and quality. And no matter how lovely the person is who comes to do your estimate, at the end of the day, it's the crew that really matters. Because if they're not polite, kind, considerate, careful, gentle with your things, you're going to have a miserable experience. A lot of people say to me, well, I'll buy some boxes and we'll start packing, and then the movers only need to do X, Y, and Z. Never do that. Please don't ever do that. The boxes you buy are not inexpensive, and they're not of the same quality as what a moving company would use. Your labor, and now we're talking bumping knees into corners of boxes, learning how to rip tape with your hands, cutting yourself on the edges of the cardboard because it is sharp, bruises, bleeding, not knowing how to stuff the boxes. But here's the really the most important thing. If you package yourself, you are not insured. If the truck tips over, if it catches on fire and you packed it, you don't have a leg to stand on because you're not an insured commercial mover. So at the end of the day, the movers will pack 3 times more quickly, if not 10 times more quickly than you will. They know how to do it. They come in with the materials. They get it done. I mean, do we know to stack our dishes this way? People tend to wrap them up and just pile them up in a box. And sheer compression is going to break those bottom plates. So let the movers pack. Also, if something does get damaged, you are covered. I'm going to segue a little bit here about insurance. If your household insurance or your renter's insurance is with one of the higher end companies like Chubb, Charter, Ace, Travelers, chances are you have an endorsement in your policy that will cover you during the course of your move. And then you will not need to purchase additional insurance from the moving company. So as part of your prep work in planning your move, check with your insurance agent to find out if you have such an endorsement. Let's talk a little bit about preparing for moving. You know where you're going, I'm assuming, and you know how big your new home is. You know what kind of work you want to do prior to moving in, or maybe you haven't thought about what it is you need to do prior to moving in. Things you should do at your new home prior to moving in. Make sure that the closets are dressed out the way you want them to be. I'm talking about how to put your racks in. Make sure that you have enough linear feet of shelving to accommodate the amount of linear feet of shelving that you have in your current home. And if you don't, you need to get rid of a certain amount of linear feet of content because shelves are just not magically going to appear. Try to understand where it is you want to put your televisions, where you want to have your at-home office or computer, and get those things pre-wired before you move in and paint so that the wires can be threaded through the walls and you don't have to break them open after you've already had the house painted. One of the most important things to do before you move into a new home is to get it scrubbed from ceiling to floor. Even if you've had contractors in there and they supposedly have cleaned it for you, it's really not clean. And you are going to be bringing all of your things into this home. It's nice to bring them into a new home. If you have beautiful area rugs in your current home, and they look clean, and they probably are clean, but they've been on the floor for 15 years, clean them. And buy some new underpadding, because all the dust that was on your rug is now in your underpadding. And so get them cleaned, send them out before you move, Get them delivered to your new home a day or two before you move in so that they are in place when the furniture arrives. I can go on and on and on about things that you should do before you move. I do have an 11-page to-do list, which Karen will make available to any one of you who requests it. And it covers everything from who you have to notify, from your financial advisor to the IRS to Social Security, all of the addresses that you need to change, all of the services that you need to turn off, and when you turn them off. Remember, you own that home through midnight of the closing day. So things get turned off at 1:01 the following morning. And you can schedule all of these things from phone to utilities over the internet. Many of us have providers, dog walkers, babysitters, home food delivery, automatic renewal of prescriptions popping up every 30 days. All of these people need to be notified, and lists need to be kept. And sometimes we forget what we have because we pay them once a year. So flip through your checkbook register and see what services you pay quarterly or annually, because you need to cancel them as well. Magazines take a good 6 to 8 weeks to get forwarded, and forget about the mail. I mean, it's really sad, but it takes a long time for the post office to reroute your mail. Your statements that come to you via mail once a month, if you pay by check, there's always a place in the back where you can put in a new address. So there's a plethora of things. If you're moving out of town, some of the most important things are to physically get your medical records. Do not wait until you get to your new destination and have a new doctor who's going to call your old doctor, because your entire file is not going to follow you. And remember, you own your medical records and your test results, but you do need to file a piece of paper with the doctor that you have to sign that gives them permission to give you your records. And the same is true if you have children, grandchildren, pets, whatever. There's medical records and dental records that you need to gather up. If you have a safety deposit box, please don't get on that airplane until you've emptied it out. People do forget. Banking to, yes?
Sorry, regarding medical records, it seems that doctors more recently are charging you,
Yeah.
and some by the page.
I know.
So when you say we own them, we don't really, right?
Well, so my doctor retired, and I got myself a new general physician, and she wanted all of my records. And so I signed all these pieces of paper, and she sent them all out. One doctor's office called me and said, well, we charge. I said, really? And that was the end of that. My doctor got the records.
It's $1 a page if you
It's
do with the doctor
it's
for 20 years.
Well, you don't really need to go back 20 years, but
No,
you
I
do
know,
need
but-
test results, and right. And they shouldn't, and you can kind of embarrass them into. Anyway, I did. All I said was really, and that was the end of that story. Does anybody have any questions about those types of preparations? Because now we're going to talk about decluttering. And I know this is painful. Let's start with your closet.
Ooh.
All right.
Sounded painful.
Okay, so I had a client, his name was Roberta. Roberta, when Roberta's husband passed away, and he was a neurosurgeon, and her 2 grown children had gone to college and were married, and so now she had...
Oh, this is Trump.
Oh, it's Trump. So Roberta slowly but surely filled up the 2 closets in the 3 bedrooms of the children, and the 2 walk-in closets in the master bedroom, the cedar closet in the basement. Oh, I can go on. She had filled up everything. And she went on a buying spree when she lost her husband, because she said when she went to department stores, That was the only place where people weren't telling her what to do. They were busy waiting for her to make decisions and ringing up the sales. So she went really on a buying tear. And she was moving from a big home in Rockville Center to a 2-bedroom apartment in Brookline, Massachusetts. And honest to God, by the time we whittled her down, she still had 2,200 square feet of stuff, and she honestly was moving to 1,700 square feet of apartment. And the process for whittling down, you know those deep drawers that you have? You know the stuff on the bottom that you haven't worn because you can't see it or because you don't like it? So those last 5 items, put them in a bag and give them to Goodwill and take a tax deduction. You know, at the ends of your closet where you can't really reach the stuff that's been pushed back there, you're not wearing that stuff either. So these are no-brainers. You don't need to really be pained about that. You know, reach down, reach out, put it in a bag, write down 10 t-shirts, 2 dresses, give it some arbitrary value, and donate it. When's the last time you had a dinner party and you have 5 sets of dishes? Do your children still have their hot stuff in your home? It's not your job to keep it. When I moved the last time, I said to my daughter, get your stuff out of my house. And she said to me, Mom, it's your job. And I said, no. And so she came, because she had a choice. She was either going to come and go through it, or I was going to throw it away. You know my daughter. So she came, and she looked through the old report cards and the old letters, and she laughed and she cried, and one by one they went into the garbage. And at the end, we wound up with 2 boxes, which are in my crawl space. Okay. But these are the things, if you haven't used them, if your lifestyle has changed. I used to entertain a lot. I don't. I had 3 beautiful sets of china. I sold 2 of them. I had a closet full of silver. So I had to keep the flatware because one day my daughter will want it. She made me keep the tea service because she said she wants it and she has no room for it. I kept a few of the things that I do use, and all the rest of it, I sold. If I wasn't using it, I was not going to move to a new space that had enough room for it just so I should keep it. The things that I remember here. And that's a good place for them to be. Crystal glasses, do you use them anymore? All 5 dozen in 5 different sizes? I wasn't using mine. I know I paid a lot of money for them. I sold the whole 5 dozen for $500, and I said, thank God somebody paid me for them, and I didn't have to throw them out. Your stuff is not worth what you think it is, and the stuff that you bought really well that you think is worth nothing is probably worth a fortune. So if you're not sure of what it is you're sitting with, have somebody take a look at it or do a little bit of research. But most of the collectibles that people collect are really worth nothing. And some of the things that you bought for some particular reason have appreciated vastly. But it's not hard to get rid of things that you don't use. I have moved people that had hundreds of photographs and diplomas and important pieces of honorary papers, and what we did is we scanned it all in, and it's all up in the cloud in beautiful albums that can be shared with family members through passwords. This is not in the public domain. There are services that can help you eliminate tons of paper and photographs. And the sad thing is, I go into homes of people that have passed away, and nobody wants the old photographs. I throw out old photographs, and the people that have passed away had old photographs of their parents and grandparents, and the surviving adult children have no idea who those pictures are of. So why store them? Why clutter up your house? Why make your environment dusty for no particular reason? Who here has problems getting rid of stuff, and what in particular can't you get rid of? Yes?
Photos and family things, like the dishware. That was my mother's.
Do you use it?
Occasionally.
Okay, then you can keep it. The photos. When you stop using it, Seriously. Or I'll tell you something else. Roberta, who I moved up to Brookline, had a lot of china. And I said, don't you dare, we're not packing anything in your kitchen. You're taking pick a set of china from and I sent her up with what she called good china. And I sent her up with her silver and silver plate flatware. And we got rid of everything in the kitchen. I said, you have it, use it. Eat like a lady, because otherwise your kids are just going to throw it out. And so she is very happy, and she has beautiful china, and she writes to me, she's using her stuff. I just moved another woman to Florida who also took her beautiful china, and we got rid of all the other stuff at a big estate sale. If you live in a house, you can have an estate sale. If you live in an apartment, you cannot. That's the reality of trying to get rid of things. Somebody else had a hand up about what they couldn't get rid of. Yes?
I can't get rid of anything.
Okay.
I mean, anything that has a anything that I associate with something sentimental, someone who gave it to me, that's maybe not here any longer.
I understand. So I just moved a woman out of a giant apartment on Central Park West. Huge apartment. And this huge apartment not only had her lifetime's worth of stuff in it. When she sold her house in Southampton, she took all of that stuff and crammed it into this apartment. So it was all like a hoarder's home. You could not navigate around very easily. I think I just did something bad. And when it was time for the movers to come to pack her, because there was so much clutter in the house, we could only get 2 moving guys in instead of a typical crew of 6, because there was no room for the man in the boxes. It was terrible. And at the end of the day, while we were packing, this is another person I chased around the house because she couldn't make any decisions. She had a very large maid's room. That's what she called it. That's what it was. And whatever she was eliminating, we just tossed into the room. The room was filled from floor to ceiling, from back to front. And that was just the beginning of her garbage. There were 3 truckloads of trash removed from that house. And trash will run you $800 to $1,000 a truckload. So had she thrown things out over time on a normal basis, it's expensive to throw stuff out. So eliminate a little bit. And now she moved into her new apartment, and she has, the rest of the stuff is in storage. You were telling me about storage? Okay, you put stuff in storage. Let me tell you, at the end of the year, you bought it all back again. Storage is not free.
Oh, yeah.
And stuff in storage deteriorates because climate control, which means it never freezes, but it does boil. It gets really hot in there. There's no air circulation. Things are wrapped and padded, or they're in cardboard boxes. Things dry out. Things get ruined. I put clients into storage for 6 months, 7 months. I put one client into storage for 18 months because that's how long it took until their new homes were complete. But they weren't in storage permanently because they couldn't get rid of things. A friend of mine had stuff in storage after his wife died. He packed up his whole home out in Long Island, and he bought an apartment on West 72nd Street. And he kept telling me about all the beautiful things in storage. And one day I said to him, all right, Herb, let's go deal with it. So we drove out to some storage facility someplace in Long Island, and we walked into this big room of his. And he looked, and I looked, and we looked at each other. And by the time we got done spending 4 or 5 hours out there, we walked out with 2 cartons of papers that were his son's. His son, they belonged to his son, apostrophe S. And we shipped them off to Israel, where his son was now living. And the rest of the stuff all went into the trash. Box springs and mattresses, an old armoire, what he thought was beautiful art. It was like prints and reprints. This was his first home, and everything was beautiful, but it really wasn't. And he had moved on in life, and there was no way he was ever going to use this stuff. And you cannot leave box springs and mattresses in storage for years and years and years. You can't leave anything in storage for years and years. So he was paying, I don't know how many hundreds of dollars a month for how many years. And when he was ready to deal with it, he dealt with it. So I am a great motivator to get people moving. I have gone in to help clients organize, to eliminate, and after a day, once you get people jump-started, it becomes so cathartic to throw stuff out. They don't want me anymore. They're just busy tossing things out. So decluttering is yes.
I have a question. When you decide to sell the items,
Uh-huh.
I only know about the garage sales.
Okay.
How do you sell your items, like furniture, expensive stuff, non-expensive
Ah,
stuff?
okay. I'll tell you
Like
how
silver.
I'll tell you how I
like
sell it.
stainless steel.
Okay. First of all, furniture is really hard to sell today, especially brown mahogany furniture. Stuff from Ethan Allen type furniture. Expensive, nice furniture, nobody wants it. What do people want? They want mid-century modern, which is, think 1950s teak, Danish, or Herman Miller, quasi-industrial. That stuff there's a very big market for. There is a market for what I call screamingly modern Italian furniture, which I happen to love. There is a market for highly decorative furniture. You know, the reproductions of the 18th century antique stuff with the ormolu trim or painted surfaces or inlaid marquetry designs. The type of thing that when you bought these reproductions set you back $5,000 to $8,000 a chunk of furniture. There's a market for it, but not at $5,000 to $8,000. There is a market for certain types of lamps and certain types of crystal and certain types of decorative objects. Sterling silver, there's a market for. Definitely jewelry, definitely good art. Nice sconces, certain chandeliers, not the big crystal ones, nobody wants them anymore. So you can do a garage sale, which to me is like your junk and you sell it in the driveway. You can do an estate sale. Now that you need to be in a home for, and that's where you sell all the furniture and the nice new toaster oven and the new microwave and the dining room table and all the stuff that doesn't qualify as things that a dealer would buy. And everything is pre-priced and people come and then an estate sale person handles the sale for you. They charge you anywhere from 35% to 40%. And everything will go. People will buy your wrapping paper and your knitting needles and your barbecue and your outdoor furniture. They will buy everything. And you're going to be making money for stuff that you no longer wanted, and it's cash. And it doesn't matter how much it is, you're not paying to throw it out. And then there's the kind of stuff that I sell. I sell the decorative stuff, the very expensive stuff, wine cellars full of wine, cars, jewelry ranging from a bunch of like odd gold cufflinks to major diamond stones. You're a dealer, we were talking about this before. I sell to dealers. So if it's what I would classify as just really lovely, fine furnishings, decorative in nature, it all gets photographed, it all gets measured, it all gets described, pictures get uploaded by category, so I'll have the decorative furnishings lot, the sterling silver plate lot, the gold and diamond gold, silver enamel blood jewelry lot. And if there's not enough to break it down in lots, the whole thing becomes one big gigantic lot. And I invite dealers. And the dealers come and they look and they take their own pictures and they make their own notes. And they all have to submit an offer by a drop-dead date, by email, because I need it in writing. So a home could have 2 or 3 lots, it could have 1 lot, and the person who makes the highest offer gets the lot. They pay the truckers and the packers, and it's their responsibility to pick it up. They're insured, so there's no issue. They walk in the door, they hand me a check payable to my client, take your stuff, and leave. More expensive individual items, fine work of art, a car, whatever. If it's beyond a certain value, it's sold as an individual standalone item. That takes a little bit longer to sell because the idea is to maximize the amount of money you get. So if you're just talking about regular furniture and you live in an apartment, donate it. Even Housing Works is fussy about picking up furniture. Nobody will take a hide-a-bed, a sofa bed. Yes.
I I have many other issues, but clutter isn't one of them. I'm minimalist, and it gives me
Okay.
the greatest pleasure to get rid of stuff. I've had a lot of success through the years on Craigslist.
I don't use Craigslist because I don't know who's walking into my house.
Yes,
I live in a
that's
boarding-
what was my next question. I don't want people walking into my house and looking at other things and just walking in with dirty shoes and all that stuff.
Right, you don't want a stranger walking through your house, but you're at a point in your life where you just want to get rid of some stuff. Is it what I would call high end? Oh, well, then you can
I
sell.
have to let them in.
No, you don't let in a stranger. You can let a dealer in,
Oh.
but you don't let in strangers. And when I bring in a dealer into somebody's home, they are always beside me. I'm always beside them. They're just not walking around. You don't want anybody just walking around your home.
The things that you sell that you're talking about, they're actually the homes of clients that
Yes.
you go to and you set it all up. This is what we're selling.
Yes.
So it's not in your home.
No, it's
in
not.
your
It's
okay.
in the client's home. The client could be alive and still living there. The client could be alive and has already moved out, and this is what they've left behind. And sometimes the client is dead. Yes.
Electronics,
Haha, what about them?
getting rid of electronics. Do you sell electronics?
They don't bring very much. They sell at estate sales. Cameras are worth nothing. Lenses are worth nothing. Computers, you want to destroy the hard drive, so it's worth nothing. But those things do sell at estate sales, printers and that kind of stuff. But there's no market for them otherwise. You could, there are websites where they buy your electronics. You have to pack them up and ship them, and then they'll send you some money after they get them, depending upon the condition that they get them in, from cell phones up and down. So decluttering is important. Knowing where you're going is important. You addressed this a little bit before. People do have fantasies about where it is they think they want to live. They should go visit. They should spend a summer. They should rent a house. Don't just go someplace and buy it. And you need to know whether or not you can, what's important to me, medical facilities. I'm not moving any place where there's not a good hospital. Culture is important to me. I like college towns because they have these things. I move a lot of people into beautiful independent living facilities. What happens when you move into a situation like that, none of us are getting any younger, and you will find people in their 50s right through their 80s and early 90s in independent living facilities. And it's hard to make friends. When we're younger and we have kids, our kids meet other kids, and then we meet the mothers, and it just becomes part of that exchange through the school system, if you would. Moving someplace new involves screwing up your courage and joining something. Anything that you're interested in. It could be a religious facility. It could be an art class. It could be a movie class. It could be a book club, a gardening club. Whatever you're interested in, join something. If you like to play golf, if you like to crew on a sailing boat, whatever. Or if you're moving into an independent facility, or if your parents are moving into an independent facility. A lot of you still have parents here. Make sure that you get there shortly after they have moved in one night for dinner, because dinner is downstairs in a dining room, and it's usually at a table for 6 or 8 people. There aren't that many couples at independent living facilities, and I only know this because my mother moved into one. She elected to move into it all of a sudden, out of the clear blue, after she told me the people there are too old, I'm never going to live there. And I heard a certain loneliness in her voice, so I flew down to Florida, and we had dinner at this table with 8 people I didn't know. And so I introduced myself. Hi, I'm so-and-so. You are? Where are you from? How long you been here? What do you do here? And we went around the table as they were introducing themselves to me, and this one played canasta, and that one played mahjong, and this one liked the movies. And the next thing you knew, my mother was part of all of these various sundry groups. I went on the next morning, and that was that. Mission accomplished. So if you play bridge, join a bridge club. Just do something. People are not going to come and knock on your door. Opportunity does not pass by, you need to reach out and grab it. So that's, you need to know where you're going, and you need to know that if being near an airport is important to you, you don't want to have to drive 2.5 hours. If you're getting to the point where driving at night really scares you, you don't want to move someplace where there isn't decent transportation or Uber or something. You don't want to isolate yourself, especially if you're coming from a place like New York where there's so much going on around you. Socializing is not opening up your front door in the morning, going out and getting your newspaper and waving to the person across the street. That doesn't count. You really, the most important thing is socialization. And a lot of people just really wither away when they're alone because they become non-social, not out of choice, but because out of circumstance. And your children are not going to amuse you. They have their own lives, and they have their own families and their jobs and their problems. And they may call you every morning to make sure you're still alive. My daughter calls me once a day. I wonder if that's why. But you really need friends, and you really need to join things. Otherwise, you become quite lonely and quite sad. Before you move into your house, things you need to remember. When the movers are packing you, you are not going to be unpacked the day you get to your new house. You might not even be unpacked for a week or 10 days. So pack up a suitcase or two as if you were going away on vacation, and have your toiletries, some clothing that you can live with. Things that you need to do at the home end where you are is when they're packing up the master bedroom, on the box that they're putting your bedding into, mark on it, open me first. Because if you can't find that box to make your bed, you'll have no place to sleep. So you want a few boxes, room by room, of open me first. If you have a home office and it's important to you for whatever it is that you're involved in, get your home office moved over and set up, if you're staying in the area, while your house is being packed up. Get your computer guy or your AV guy or whoever it is to set up your new office so that you can walk into that house and hit the ground running. When they're packing up your kitchen and you're moving your dried food, not your refrigerated food, write food on those boxes. And make sure those boxes wind up on a counter. Don't ever write on the outside of a box what is on the inside of a box. You may never see it again. So we label boxes with codes for the room. K is the kitchen, MBR is the master bedroom. But you invent codes for every single room, and then it's K1, K2, K3, and we make inventory lists of what's getting packed up in the boxes. We also take pictures and put stickers on top, but that's a whole other story. If you're doing this yourself, you need to know what's in the boxes, and you don't want to have the boxes written on. Certain things that you do not pack at all, but you hand carry them with you if you're going around the corner or if you're moving to Australia. Your jewelry. Important papers that are hard to replace. Birth certificates, passports, any kind of documents dealing with the sale of your current home or the purchase of your new home. Make sure you have a checkbook that has a whole bunch of checks in it on you. If you are banking at some sort of cute little local bank or one of these savings and loan company kind of things, and there isn't a branch where you're going to, close your current account by walking into the bank, closing the account down to the last penny, and getting a bank check. Because if you just cut yourself a check, you're going to have trailing pennies in statements following you for the rest of your life. So close it down and then walk over to what I call a national bank, Chase, Bank of America, I don't care, and open up an account before you move so that you can bank wherever you're going. If at some point in time you decide you want a different bank, close that one down where you have moved to and open up a new one. There's no charge for any of this, by the way. You can just open up accounts. When you get new checks printed, don't put your address on them. Ever. Just your name. Why? Why did you put your address on your check? You lose a checkbook. Who needs to know where you live? No, there's no law that says your address needs to be on a checkbook. And this way you don't need to throw out all your checks and buy new ones. Yes?
What about a P.O. box?
If you have one or you're opening up one?
No, putting that on a check.
No. Why?
Don't bother, not even that.
Just your name. Just your business name. Do you remember the day when you went to the grocery and they said, put your phone number and your address on the check? Right, well, you really didn't need to. That was just something that they told the tellers that you had to do, the checkout ladies. You don't need that information on your checks, and this way you never need to buy new checks. I think I've covered most of what it is I wanted to talk to you about. So there is something. Yes, go ahead.
I also never put my social security number on the check, even when I pay, property taxes or something, and they tell you.
No, the only time you have to do it, I think, is when you pay the IRS.
You can do the last four numbers now.
Okay.
The IRS.
Yeah, right, you don't know, nobody should know any of that stuff, which is really ridiculous. Okay, a lot of people have an email address that is somehow tied to their cable TV provider. Like something or other at Opt Online, or something or other at RCN, so if you're moving, and that cable provider is not in the new building or the new town or the new wherever it is that you're going, you're going to have no email. So I would suggest that you open up a generic email account, Hotmail, Yahoo, Gmail, whatever makes you happy. Outlook, there's all these, no matter where you are in the world, email addresses that you can use. When you open up a new email address, there is some option at the very beginning that it will get into your email contacts, and it will send an email to everybody in your contacts. Please be advised that my new email address is whatever it is, because just the way you need to change your address at the post office, try to get yourself a universal email address at least 4 to 6 weeks before you move. Give people a chance to find you.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Get yourself a generic email address 4 to 6 weeks before you move, so that people will have a chance to find you.
Got it. Unless you don't want to be done.
Well, that's the perfect way. That's the perfect way to stop getting all the emails from every online place that you have shopped at, because they will not be notified.
So I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So Ran is going to take around, right? The mic, Ran, so do you want to, in case you have questions and you want to be heard, so I'll share this for a minute. I spoke to a lot of people here today, and several told me that they're thinking of moving permanently into a home where they vacationed for many years. So what are the differences they're going to find? They know that town, they know that home. How is it going to be different now?
It's going to be very different because you now have a house full of stuff here that you're not going to be taking there. All right. I have moved many people to their Florida homes, and they take very little because they have clothing, they have furniture. They will take the things that will replace some of the stuff that they may have had at their vacation home with their nicer things that are here, which means you're going to have a major selling or giving away event. When I move people in that type of a circumstance, you'd be surprised that stuff will go off in 5 different directions. Send this to my son here, send this to my daughter there, send this to so-and-so's office, send this to Florida. It's just, and so when you're packing up, because the movers will do all of the packing and moving for you, everything now becomes color-coded. So pick a color per destination and pack it out by color so that they can load the truck by color, because first in is last out. And the rest of it you're either going to sell, throw out, or donate. Now, I moved a lovely couple to Florida. They had a beautiful home in Boca. It was very modern. It was fully furnished. It was gorgeous. Murray was very sentimental. And he wanted stuff that his wife did not want.
That's normal.
I will tell you that Murray's wife was and still is a very pragmatic woman. And they negotiated a little bit, but she gave in mightily, and she said, it's more important that I have a good marriage. I'll deal with it in Florida. I guarantee you it's all in the garage, but it's there. So, you don't go to war because you're with whoever you live with. It's not worth it. But get rid of what you are not going to use, and if you have something nicer here than what you've got there, take that with you and get rid of the stuff at the other end. Do not double down. You don't need 4 measurement cups.
You didn't mention the piano.
Is it a baby grand?
It's a Steinway.
Yes, but is it a baby grand?
It's parlor B.
Ooh, nice. Are you taking it?
Well, we're not moving.
Oh, okay. So pianos. I have clients. I have clients. I have friends. I have people that tell me, next time you come across a piano, I need an upright. My kid is now taking piano lessons. I mean, because pianos don't have a market like they used to. Children are not taking piano lessons. Steinways that used to sell for $5,000 to $12,000 are now selling in the hundreds of dollars.
The ivory keys are a no-no.
Well, only at auction.
Yeah.
Ivory anything at auction is a no-no. But I had a client who had a beautiful baby grand piano, and she donated it to a music school and got a huge tax write-off, because valuing something for donation is way different than trying to sell it. I've had 2 clients that have given pianos to music schools. They're hard to get rid of. Go ahead.
When I was emptying out my parents' house, they had a beautiful baby grand, black lacquer, just very nice in a nice place, and I tried to sell it, and they first charge you to get it out of your house.
Oh, no, I've sold it, but you were charged to get it out of your house.
I was not charged to get it out of my house, but pianos places would charge me to get it out of the house, even if I wanted to give it to them. So I was not given money for it in the whole move using an estate person. But he didn't charge me to take it out, and it was huge and heavy, and there is no market. And also, if it's not tuned in 20 years, it probably is never going to be tuned again. So you have to be mindful of that.
Well, the other thing also is tuning a piano. If it hasn't been tuned in a long time, you'll have to tune it and then tune it 2 months later and then tune it 2 months later. But if you're going to move a piano, you're going to have to tune it immediately upon arrival, because they tip pianos over and put them on soundboards, and the minute you do that to a piano, it goes out of tune.
Yeah.
Most pianos are very dusty on the inside, so they need cleaning. So whoever is going to either buy or receive this piano as a donation is going to have to put some money into it. But, and there are still people that buy pianos, not too many.
I have a little bit of an experience, and then with a question attached. So we seem to move our business about every decade. And 3.5 years ago when we moved, I had just moved my home a few years before that, and I thought, this is going to be a cinch, because, moving a home was all about what's in your closet and very personal. This is going to be easy, and it wasn't at all easy. It was very, very complicated, because we have 35 staff members, and we have a lot of stuff, and even in a home, you had to decide about what you needed to keep, like for SEC rules or whatever, what you could finally get rid of, what you wanted to replace in terms of technology and all things like that. Why take your old stuff? You're going to update anyway in 6 months, so you may as well update. So do you have any advice for business moves, and is that very different in your mind from personal moves?
Oh yes, business moves are a nightmare. Only because of the logistics of it all. There's usually a lot of staff, there's a lot of filing cabinets, there's a lot of individual offices, and then there's the big office space in the middle. There are companies that do nothing but move businesses. Businesses need to move at night. They don't let you use the elevators in the middle of the day. So at you could be packed up, but at 5 o'clock they start moving stuff out, they get it over to your new place, and they deliver it. This all happens at night. Is that what happened with you?
Yes.
I've lived through a few of these. So the most efficient way to do it really is that everybody that has an office, or every employee, they have their own personal files. Everything has to be marked. All the transfile boxes need to be marked with that person's name, because it's going to go to that person's area. And when you pack things in filing cabinets, even when the movers pack clothes or filing cabinets for my clients, we pack from left to right. So the way they're in the drawer, they go into the box. You don't just sort of start putting them in, or you don't put them in backwards or frontwards. If they're in alphabetical order, they get packed in alphabetical order, and then they get taken out and dumped into the file drawer in alphabetical order. When we pack clothes in closets, we start at this side, and we go that way, and this stuff gets picked up directly the way it is and goes into the box. So it stays, and all the wardrobes are numbered, so that when we get to the new home, all the clothes can get put. People are very fussy. Men more so than women. Men have their blue shirts and their white shirts and their cream-colored shirts, and then their dark suits and their summer suits and their shoes. Men are much neater than women. And very fastidious about the way their clothes are put away. I did forget to mention one thing. I want to talk about medication. We all take pills. You have to hand carry your meds with you, but if you're moving to an area where you're going to be using a new pharmacy, whether it's around the corner because you get your medication at a local pharmacy, or you're going to a new city, make sure that you get new prescriptions so that when you get to where you are, you can at least start your prescriptions at a new pharmacy. If you do mail order drugs, like for every 90 days, you just need to notify them of your new address. But, that takes some planning also. You don't want to mess up your meds. Moving an office is difficult. When you're packing, when your movers are packing, don't pack. When your movers are packing you, and they are doing your bureau drawers, do it a drawer at a time. And you're paying for the move, so they need to listen to you. They'll pack a drawer, then you have them put down a piece of white paper, then let them do the next drawer, then put down a piece of white paper, so that when you unpack, it's neat and it's easier to refill your drawers. The same with your clothing, the same everything. Shoes do not get thrown into the bottom of wardrobe boxes. They get wrapped up a period of time and put into boxes, That's when I mentioned to you that it's all about the crew. Some moving guys are just very fast and very lazy and they don't care, and others will take their time. And so when you interview the mover at the very beginning, the person that's going to do the estimate, you need to tell them how you want your things to be handled, how you want your clothes to be packed. If they know that you're fussy, they will send you a fussy crew. More questions?
Yeah, I have a question. We may be in a position of having to unload an old relative who is dying in his home. I'm sorry. Okay. And she's been kind of a collector, I guess you would say. What's the best way to do that? I mean, what does decluttering look like when you're going into somebody else's home and trying to get it ready to sell and get rid of stuff?
Okay, I don't know what kind of stuff she has. There's collections and there's collections.
She has so much stuff, we don't know really what's good or what's not good.
Okay, well then you should have somebody come in and eyeball it. I'm doing an estate right now that needs to be sold. And it was full of stuff, books, art, statues, stuff. There's stuff everywhere. So what we did in order to stage the home to sell it, the clothes were all donated, so now all the closets were empty, and all the drawers were empty. So we took all of the nice stuff that's highly saleable, but definitely cluttered up this home, which made it impossible to get nice pictures for marketing purposes, and we put it in the empty closets. And it will all be sold when it looks like this home will go to contract. So you can declutter for selling purposes by getting rid of stuff and making room. And there's absolute garbage in every house. The linen in the linen closet. You know, if you are so inclined, take it to the Humane Society. They use it for bedding. You don't have to necessarily throw it out. But you can empty out a lot of extraneous stuff and make room to hide things so that you can stage your home for sale. And then go about either having a grand estate sale once your house is under contract, because that's what all of the stuff is worth, or sell it in various sundry ways. But if you're just looking to declutter, deal with the paper first. Paper. Yesterday, I'm doing an estate on West End Avenue, and yesterday we got through the living room only. This woman had paper everywhere, and we're going through the paper, and I found 3 Chase bank accounts that they said, we don't know where she banks. We have all her brokerage statements. I've done all of her taxes, but I have no clue where she banks. So I unearthed the fact that she had 2 checking and 1 savings account. We found out by going through the papers that she has 4 safety deposit boxes and a life insurance policy. What else did I find? I found some unusual checks. The woman had never cashed checks, refunds from the IRS, stuff back from Medicare. It so happens that an accountant is the executor, and I figure if anybody can get this money back, she can. So all those uncashed checks and all those papers, I mean, and we filled up the bathtub, and I've got bags all over her bed, and I've got boxes stacked up. And that's just going through and eliminating the stuff in the living room. In the kitchen, she has what I call delicatessen Tupperware. You know all those plastic containers that people save? They're going right into recycling. I mean, so these are the things that you can just throw out, but you have to go through them first. And before you get rid of any clothing, please check the pockets.
Oh, yeah.
Jewelry, money, lapels, or ladies hang pins on things.
I've heard people put them in dishes too.
I'll tell you, I have found jewelry.
I've heard people tell me that they put them in dishes, if you wonder what I was saying. I
Right.
find that so amazing, but you can't just give a pot to a thrift shop.
you have
There
to
could
check-
be a Rolex in
check
it.
everything. I had a string of South Sea pearls in a can of coffee. Okay, so yesterday when we were done with the living room, my assistant went into the kitchen, and I said, any open food goes right in the garbage, but you're going to stand there and literally pour it into the bag and watch it, because there was a woman who kept her diamond jewelry in the cornflakes. And then,
I've heard that.
now this is not my client, this is a friend of a lawyer I know. She kept all of her diamond jewelry in the cornflakes. None of her kids ate cornflakes. And it was just before Passover. And she had to get rid of anything in the house that was not kosher for Passover. And she threw the box of cornflakes down the incinerator. True story. So that's a true story. So yes, you have to check. You'll know about the handbag. You can see a tissue in there. There could be a gold chain in there, because I found a few that way. So get rid of the absolute garbage. The underwear that's disgusting. Anything that nobody would use or ever wear again. Just bag it up in big contractor bags and either get some garbage company to come and take them away, or take them to the curb. Then you can put away the extraneous stuff. And if there's nothing there that's of significant value, but it's all estate sale value, because this is a home, you can have a fabulous sale once the house is under contract. But you have a lot of work ahead of you. Yes?
Well, with all the changes in the tax law, these donations are probably almost worth nothing, right?
Speak to your financial advisor.
I think, if you didn't make it, like if an artist has a painting, I have an artist client who's 98, he has all these paintings that he wants to give to some university, but he won't profit from it. But he has one by another very, very famous painter, and he could get a great tax write-off for donating that one. So, there's no one uniform, like, I don't know what you have, and it's not everything. But it's certainly possible for many things.
Yes.
Donating your personal property and belongings would be an itemized deduction. The tax law made the standard deduction a little bit more appealing relative to the itemized deductions. But if we were still itemizing deductions, donating something like furniture, expensive clothing still has a tax benefit.
Oh, there is something right. We were talking about decluttering. I'm going to get a little personal here. I go into people's homes and they have passed away and they did not declutter, and things I have found.
Okay.
In the home of a very elegant lady who was an interior designer with beautiful floor-to-ceiling closets. She even had a whole wall of closets in this giant bathroom. And so here I am standing on a ladder with her housekeeper on the ground, and I'm passing things down from the top of this closet, and I'm short, so this is hard for me to reach. And there's photo albums up there. In the bathroom, in the back. They were fabulous nude shots of her. Albums upon albums. She was gorgeous, but so she obviously didn't want them out into the public, but she just left them there. That's just the tip of the iceberg of the stuff that I find. And it's really nice to know that people have nice, healthy lives up until the end. But if there's, I have found in one home, one of the first estates I did, in the top drawer of the bureau, in the mother's room, and she was the last person that she'd been married. Her first husband died, she remarried, her second husband died, and then she died. In the drawer, there was you remember those boxes that were sort of covered with beautiful fabric that you kept things in? Mm-hmm. There was one of those boxes, and all of these letters were in there. I opened up a few because I found letters that the children want. Well, these were letters from a lover that she had in the middle of her first marriage. So I threw them out. And I was discussing it with a girlfriend of mine that night. As a matter of fact, this is the friend that I'm meeting next week up in Montreal. And I said, I threw out these love letters. And she said, well, you should have given them to the children. And I said, no, we had a huge fight. It became a moral issue. My moral stance was, if the kids knew, they knew. And if they didn't know, they didn't have to find out. So I don't understand why people hold on to certain things beyond a certain point. So if you haven't used it in a year, get rid of it. You need to remember, sooner or later, somebody's going to see everything you own.
Right. Cleaning out my parents' house, I found love letters from my mother's boyfriend before she met my father that she kept 95, well, not 95, she kept 75 years. And they were wrapped up and all that. Ernie, and I couldn't believe, and she spoke about Ernie. She did talk about Ernie. She loved my father, but she did talk about Ernie.
And Ernie was
And here were love letters. I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe it. It was so, and I didn't even find it. The estate guy found, I don't even know where he found it, somewhere in the attic.
But did it
stashed away.
upset you to know that there were the letters?
I'm sorry.
Were you upset to know that there were
No,
letters?
I wasn't upset.
I think it's your right to know.
My parents were healthy, if you know what I mean. You know, they had a healthy attitude about things, and more power to her. And she didn't see him, as far as I know, while they were married. As far as I know, I mean, you never know these things. I don't want to know. But I wonder if Ernie kept her letters.
I don't
I don't know if Ernie is still with us. I don't know if he's still with us.
That's funny.
Okay, and as, you know, we're talking about moving and getting our lives organized and decluttering and all of these things. And it's a little off topic, but as long as you are busy organizing, we all have important papers. We all have, you know, our various sundry accounts and maybe a copy of your will at home and brokerage statements and bank statements and, you know, documents about ownerships of your home. And it's all either neatly filed someplace in your home or it's helter-skelter. And some people have it all in their computer. All I'm going to say is your heirs need to know where you keep your stuff. And it doesn't matter if you just throw it into 4 boxes and they will have to sort it out later, as long as they know those 4 boxes are important. So I'm not saying that you need to be a neatnik, but you need to let your kids know where stuff is, including your health proxy, which is a very important document. And if everything is in your computer, somebody has to know the password. And don't forget social media passwords. There's nothing more upsetting than for me to get a birthday announcement for a friend of mine who died 5 years ago because nobody ever took her off of Facebook. So these things, you know, if we're planning and we're organizing, this is not a big, throw it in a box. You don't need to be really careful about it. If you don't have the energy to sit and really deal with it neatly, throw it all in a single big box. Yes?
Well, one thing I had read an article about this, and it's a pain in the neck to do, but I made a list of where all my accounts are, who's my accountant, who's my financial advisor, who's my lawyer, where things are located, and I keep it in the vault, and the people who would need to know how to get to the vault and have keys, but it was a real nightmare doing it, but it's all in one place, like everything I could possibly think of, so that if I died suddenly, someone wouldn't have to do what I did when my father died.
And
Didn't tell us anything.
Right. It's not even about dying. You know, I had shoulder surgery in May, and all of a sudden I felt very vulnerable. The keeper of my life, the keeper of all my medical things. I mean, I realized I could get hit by a bus. There will be a point where somebody may have to step in and take care of me until I can get back on my feet and take care of myself. That's why my attitude about a lot of things has changed. That's why this list of yours is important. We need to depend on other people sometimes more than we might plan on doing. And it can happen at any age to any of us. So it really pays to be organized in that area of your life.
I think you have to have a place where people know your passwords to various accounts, to various, anything that you have a password for that they may need to get onto.
Yes. Throw that in the box also.
Well, thank you very much, Sharon. This was wonderful.
Thank you.
We learned so much and we enjoyed it so much. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming.